Comic Book Savant, episode 319.
I know this. This I know. All that I have, all that is me, resides inside my poetry. And every time I write a rhyme, it might be the line that sets minds free. And also, I know that I don't.
Welcome to the Comic Book Savant. I'm your host, James Harris. This week's episode is going to be a year in review on 2016, which is the last week, so it'll be the last episode of the year. I figured I'd go ahead and talk about the year end, predict some of the things for the future, talk about the status of the show, just a few things that happened in the year and that grabbed our attention. Also, we'll look at some of you guys' favorite episodes from the download numbers, talk about some of that stuff as well. But before I get into all that, as usual, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, which is InStockTrades.com. Definitely, if you have a moment, check them out. They're the best place to go online for collected editions. It's coming in more and more handy now. Just with all the different comic book movies, a lot of the companies are going back, releasing so many trades of stuff that you might want to read and catch up on before these new movies come out. That a lot of the source materials being plucked out of certain storylines for certain characters. So it's a really good time if you are a trades reader to have a resource like this. Which again, InStockTrades.com have some of the best deals online. They have the deals of the week, which is something that I love, that you can go in and get something 50% off. Normally their deals run from anywhere from like 32 to 35 up to 42% off. But for their deals of the week, they'll have a select group of trades in a particular week that are discounted to 50% off. And also you have any orders that are $50 or more. If you are a U.S. customer, you get free shipping. If you're an international customer, you still get the same great deals, but you will have to pay for your shipping. But they have some of the most competitive international shipping rates around, so you still get to save a ton of money. So that's also, a good thing. Some of the deals of the week they have for this week is that they have 52 Trade Paperback Volume 2. 52 was a phenomenal series. If you guys are not familiar, 52 was a weekly comic. It was the first time a weekly comic was ever produced for a whole year. It was a very landmark thing. They had some of the top writers in the business at the time working on it in conjunction. This is the second volume of it. I think it's broken down into 4 volumes, if I remember correctly. This is the second one, 50% off, only $17.49. That is a good deal right there for a phenomenal series. So definitely check that out. Birds of Prey, the original Birds of Prey series, written by Chuck Dixon. This is Trade Paperback Volume 3. This is another thing that was a series that you could not get these trades easily or find them easily. Now, like with Nightwing, Birds of Prey, Robin, those series from from the 90s, early 2000s now are becoming more relevant because they're doing things with those characters. So this stuff is getting put back in production so you can actually get these things now, because normally to try to find these trade paperbacks, you had to go somewhere like on eBay, and trust me, I know, because before I went all digital, I went back trying to get some of these trades, and I was paying $30, $40 for a trade, 50% off. You're getting this trade for $9.99. So it's definitely a great deal. They put some supplemental material in it too to even make it more bang for your buck. So definitely this Bird of Prey trade is definitely worth picking up. We have Invincible Iron Man Trade Paperback Volume 1, 50% off, only $8.99. That's an awesome deal. We have the Star Wars Legends Epic Collection trade paperback, and this is 50% off, so it's only $19.99. The Legends is the non-canon Star Wars stories that have been published over the years through all the different manufacturers. Now they're being put out by Marvel, but they, since Disney owns, Marvel, they got all the stuff that was Dark Horse and the pre the original Marvel series. They have all that stuff that's not canon that they have the rights to, and that they're doing these epic collections. This is great if you're a huge Star Wars fan, and this stuff was never determined what it was before, but now we know that it's non-canon, but they were still told a lot of great stories. So this is definitely worth checking out as well. And then you have Thunderbolts trade paperback volume 1. This is the newest Thunderbolt series right here. So you get that first trade paperback 50% off for $8.99. So there's some really good deals, some really good selections they have for this week. So definitely have a moment, stop by In Stock Trades, try the service out if you haven't already. And if you like the service, definitely drop them a line and let them know that you heard about them here on the Comic Book Savant podcast. That helps me out greatly when it comes to that. And also want to give a shout out to my friends over at the Comics Podcast Network. If you like this podcast and you want to listen to and find more comic book related shows, I can't recommend highly enough to go to the Comics Podcast Network. You can find them over at comicspodcast.com. They have literally hundreds of different shows. The great thing about the Comics Podcast Network is there's a lot of independent podcasters like myself come together to form this network. So you can find shows that are just about one particular character or team or publisher. It's so much variety. So almost any topic that you want to drill down on, you can probably find a podcast to suit your needs over at the Comics Podcast Network. So definitely, again, if you enjoy this show and you're looking for other comic book related podcasts, that is the place to go. Again, comicspodcast.com for the Comic Podcast Network. Definitely have at it because some great podcasts there. And like I said, it's a limited amount of topics and individual shows that you can find. So if you have a moment and you're looking for a new show to listen to, take a moment and stop by. Now, again, this has been a really interesting year when it comes to, comics in general. And I just wanted to reflect on some of it. And, I noticed that it's been a shift for me, fundamentally. I noticed now where we're at with comic book movies, TV, that before, when as a comic book reader, I don't fancy myself as a comic book collector anymore because I'm all digital. So I really am about just reading the stories and the meat of the content, not a collector. That, a few years ago, the stuff that I loved was being adapted, and it was all the top tier characters, top tier stories. So I was already familiar with a lot of that stuff. So it made me more critical of the product of when we got into the cartoons, when we got into the movies, when we got into the television shows. Now we're like at a different part. Now we're looking at Marvel's been producing movies for almost going on 10 years, Marvel Studios proper. And, they've released, 14, 15 movies. Probably by the time they hit the 10-year mark, I think it'll be like at 20 movies they have released in their MCU, which is just crazy. And then you're looking at, DC's coming on strong with, they're just kind of in their infancy in their expanded universe. But, if you really start the beginning of their expanded universe, it starts with Man of Steel from a few years ago. So they're still, three movies: Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Suicide Squad. So they're 3 movies in with 2 more coming out. So they'll already be at 5. By the end of 2017. So, and that's not talking about Fox with their over the past 15 or so odd years or so with their X-Men franchise, Sony with their Spider-Man stuff. We've had over a decade now of like this renaissance of comic book movies, and I'm finding it more and more that television shows are dictating in movies because they're dealing with lesser characters I don't know much about. We look at, the past few years alone, Guardians of the Galaxy, that was considered such a huge risk, became this phenomenon. I didn't know about this much about the incarnation the team of Guardians of the Galaxy. I remember Guardians of the Galaxy from the 80s and reading comics that my cousins would hand down to me. The original team of Guardians of the Galaxy, which is way different from the team that we have now. But that was all I knew. So, when I started seeing promotion for Guardians of the Galaxy, I went out and, cool thing is, you'll start seeing all these, comics and stuff pop up that probably were hard to find or that you would have to dig out to find. They come to the forefront. They're re-released. Cool thing about digital, with apps like Comixology and so forth, or if you do the Marvel Unlimited, that you have, they'll do big sales, or they'll make more of these hard to find comics released, because Marvel Unlimited works a little bit different. Comixology is more you buy a la carte, and Marvel Unlimited is like you have a library and new comics I think are staggered out over a 6-month block or what have you. So it's a very interesting thing. So you're getting more and more access to stuff. So the onset, or when you start hearing these announcements of these movies, they're different characters. Ant-Man is another example. It makes you want to go read. I've noticed, like, I was just reading the other day for upcoming episode. I was reading a Deadshot miniseries from, I don't even know when it came out, but what sparked me to buy the series was the use of Deadshot. This was even before the Suicide Squad movie was announced or even came out. Was the use of the Floyd Lawton character on Arrow. And I was like, man, I've seen Deadshot and, different comics in that, like with Secret Six and, Suicide Squad and stuff like that. He's been more of a prominent character in the DCU, but they're just books I hadn't got around to and read, so I didn't know a lot about the character. But through the Arrow show, they did not Weapon X, but Task Force X run, where they had Floyd Lawton be a reoccurring character and tied him to the Andy Diggle character in some of the earlier seasons of Arrow, and their relationship just was very interesting to me, and just the dynamic of the actor playing him. And I think Comixology had a sale, and I just saw the series, and it was like 99 cents. It was a 4 or 5 issue series. I just grabbed it, and I just sat down and read it. And I'm not going to go into my thoughts of it, because, like I said, I'm going to do an episode on it. But it was definitely gave me more insight to the character. Now I've seen the Suicide Squad and seen Will Smith's portrayal of the character. Now it's like a character that I'm really interested in, that otherwise probably if I hadn't seen him on television. They also did a really good Assault on Arkham DC animated movie as well. The Deadshot was kind of featured in it. All this stuff leading up to testing for the Suicide Squad movie. It feels like now, when you see where they were timed and then it ended up leading into a movie, that they kind of tested the character different places, and before they put that out, which again really sparked my interest in the character and led me into doing more on this character. And I find myself doing it more and more, like when the Secret Warriors were introduced on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I picked up the first trade. I was like, I know it was a series from a few years back. It had a run of maybe 50 issues or somewhere around there. I think it's like a total of 5 or 6 trades or whatever. But I was like, I'm not going to go too crazy. I'll buy the first trade. And I just recently, just during the break, I started sitting down and reading it. It was like, wow, this is really good stuff, here. Like I said, I've went back and picked up a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy stuff, because they had a lot of sales like around when the movie came out. So they had one series that was like 20 some issues, and another series, and I just like it was Christmas time. I think I had some Christmas money, so I just like, when they had the 99 cent sale, like I bought one whole series and most of the most recent one that I have to go on my backlogs to like read. But it was like my because I enjoyed the first movie, and now with the second movie is like, it's really starting to dictate my influencing the way I read comics. And I just wanted to touch on that. It's like, it's a crazy trip, because I noticed more this year, because we're getting deeper in the lore through these comic book companies and how they're tying in and have these expanded universes and have these multiple platforms between not just, you know, the movies, but the television shows, where sometimes they can dig deeper into the lore and touch on lesser known characters and really flesh them out to make them interesting. That now I notice more and more that's where I'm going to find inspiration on what to read in comics now, you know, which is normally through this avenue and recommendations and, you know, seeing what the hot thing is being talked about on Twitter and Facebook and stuff like that. But it's more and more for me, you know, that the actual other mediums are kind of influencing it some or leading me more. Certain diehard stuff that, you know, I hear people talk about that, boom, that's what I'm going to read. Because I know those people know me, and, you know, so when they suggest something to me, I'm going to jump on it. But my reading list is expanding even more just from the content that's being thrown out there and characters I'm being introduced to that normally I wouldn't know much about. And I think that's an awesome thing. Another talking point, I'm just going to go over some of my best ofs for the year. For me, I want to talk about first my best ongoing series, and for me, it was Darth Vader. I know it ended. It was a finite series. It wasn't an ongoing. It finished up. It was 25 issues long. It was a phenomenal series. I love Kieran Gilliam. Just really love the insight he took on Darth Vader. I thought it was very effective that he covered a specific point in time and told us, you know, this kind of tale of redemption for Darth Vader when it came to his spot in the Empire and with his relationship with the Emperor between Star Wars and then Empire Strikes Back during that period of time when, you know, basically he was the only survivor of the catastrophic destruction of the Death Star, and he was on the, you know, Palpatine's, you know, S list, if you could say, poop list. So it was very interesting seeing a tale of redemption in the weirdest form, because they do have a kind of twisted relationship, and they give a lot of insight on their relationship as well. Very good series. I really, really enjoyed it. So for me, that was the best ongoing series. Again, these are just my opinions. This is no official, you know, list. No votes were taken. These are just my personal thoughts. One of the best new series for me was Future Quest, and I do totally admit this is totally a guilty pleasure. I haven't read all the issues that have been released since the series started. I'm like halfway through the series, but it's just they're taking a lot of these cartoons like Johnny Quest and Birdman and the Herculoids, all these like cheesy cartoons that I grew up with as a young kid, and like modernizing them and weaving them together and just really making them cool and making it compelling for me. I kind of, you know, I feel like it's a guilty pleasure, but I really have enjoyed it so far. You know, so that would be me, my best new series. Best limited series for me was Kanan. This was the Star Wars. It was supposed to be an ongoing. It was supposed to be, okay, here's the weird thing, the history track on this. Originally, it was supposed to be like a 5 or 6 issue mini limited series. Then they announced it as an ongoing series, and then it got to issue 12, and then they canceled the book. But I really enjoyed it. It was a character that I was on the fence about. Kanan is Kanan Jarrus, which is one of the lead characters in the Star Wars Rebels TV show, animated show. I didn't know much about him. The first season of the show it came out. This served as giving you some insight into him. It had the subtitle Kanan the Last Padawan. He basically enters into Clone Wars, the very, you know, in what ended up being the very last days of the Clone Wars. His his master is gunned down. He survives. He goes underground, and it tells this very unique story on, a Padawan that survived Order 66. And again, he's a very prominent as an adult character in the Star Wars Rebels series. That is predates Rogue One, or it kind of overlaps with Rogue One. We still have another couple of seasons left on this show, so we don't know all of the effects yet, how it ties into Rogue One, but it's after the Clone Wars and before Star Wars A New Hope. So it gives some insight in his days as a Padawan, and just the life he went through during Order 66, hiding, changing his name. His name was really Caleb Doom. But he comes up with Kanan Jarrus and how he basically survives. It's a very interesting story, and the miniseries kind of covers that. Then they kind of do some cross cuts in between episodes of Rebels, and to give further insight in how he ties into those characters as well. It was a really good series. It wasn't the best written series ever, but it added so much to the character and helped the kind of between episodes thing for the show. So it was really a satisfying series that I would have hoped that it was around a little bit more. I definitely think they had more stories to tell. I think it ended abruptly in the middle of a story, or right at the ending of the story, and I could have dealt with it more if it had a more finite line. If they did like what they did with Vader, and that it was like a 25 issue, and they told a specific, to get you to a certain point with the character and really how he fit in with everything. I definitely felt like it was they pulled the plug a little too soon. It wasn't a satisfying ending to the series, but that happens from time to time in the comic business. So definitely, we've been there and done that before, and I've ranted heavily on Marvel announcing statuses of series. They even retweeted one of my rants one time before. So what can I say? I've been there and done that, and they've gotten way better. But again, if sales are just not there, at the end of the day, it's the comic book business, so they have to handle their business. Best comic book movie for me of the year was Captain America: Civil War, hands down. I've talked about this in detail in previous episodes, episode 297, where I do my review. I talk about it in detail, where it ranks for me overall on the scale of Marvel Expanded Universe movies. Enough said about that. For me, best comic book related television show was Luke Cage. I don't know what it was, and different people and had different opinions, and I've had a lot of friends. I got into a few conversations on Facebook where a friend of mine was struggling through it, and he didn't like it, and he was like, James, should I, keep pushing through and watching it? And I'm like, not every show and not every comic is meant for everyone. It's totally subjective, and that's like when I'm doing this list, some people might totally not agree with some of these things I'm picking, but it's just a subjective thing. Certain things hit different people a certain way, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's just what works for you. Luke Cage for me was a very interesting show, and it struck a lot of different tones. Me being an African-American male is very, it's one of the first shows that Marvel went all out for, and I think they took a lot of risk. It was produced, they had, the showrunner was African-American, really heavily influenced. It was, and shot in Harlem, and, it was very authentic to the area. It was shot right there in location on the ground. They incorporated a lot of historical figures from hip hop and rap in the show as background characters, which I loved. The soundtrack was phenomenal. It was just very true to its roots and true to itself. And I would like to see more of that on the female side, that they did it with this, pretty much totally all African American cast. It was just handled so beautifully. Was it a slow burn? Yes, it was, but I thought the payoffs in it were worth it. Was it some kind of corny parts? Yeah, Luke Cage used to be like a corny character. He was a blaxploitation character from the 70s. but how they modernized it and just told what I felt like was a really good story, just edged out other shows that came out, like Daredevil Season 2 and Jessica Jones, which I really enjoyed earlier in the year, but it just edged it out. And I talked about it more when I reviewed Luke Cage. I'm trying to remember the episode number, but I don't have it on the top of my head. But when I did a review on that, I spoke on kind of all these things and why I ranked it where it was and why it was just the best television for me. Best comic book related cartoon or series for me, Star Wars Rebels. I just recently talked about it a couple episodes back when I did, or maybe it was last episode when I did the mid-season update on shows about how this season is going. But Rebels is one of those weird shows where, because it's on Disney XD, it has to cater to a younger audience, even though I'm a grown man watching a children's cartoon. But the good episodes they have are so good and ties into the lore so heavily that it makes those lesser episodes, those kiddie episodes, worth fighting through to get to those adult episodes they throw in for us as being those diehard Star Wars fans. So for me, overall, it takes the cake. Best animated film. I didn't get a chance to see mainly this is a DC category right here because they're doing all the animated films. Marvel's really not doing animation that much anymore. They're doing the animated television shows, but not the animated films like they used to. I wish they would get back to that because they could tell some more adult stories, kind of like DC is doing, away from the expanded universe. But I guess they want the whole treasure trove available for when they're doing the movies. So, but I wish they would get back to doing that because some of their movies were, really good. And it's, I think it's been like 8 years or so since they stopped doing them, and they made some good ones. And, we know a lot of the talent that helped produce those now all work for, like Jay Olivia worked for them and did quite a few of their movies. Now he's one of the leading directors for most of DC stuff, but I digress. My best animated film was Batman Bad Blood. I just think for the cast of characters, seeing Batwing, Nightwing, Batwoman, I just thought it was just really good. Jay Olivia knocked it out the park again. You my boy. He just seems to produce. He oversees that Batman universe, and they produce at least one of the, because it's not Die Hard, Batman. It's their animated universe Batman, and it was a hard sell for me at first, but I've gotten really used to them as they've done more and more movies. I'm really enjoying it, and I can't wait to see what the next one in the series they're going to do. Best publisher for me is Marvel. Reason why I pick Marvel is just most of the books and this is such a weird thing for me, is that I find myself, I'm not reading the main universe stuff. I buy it, I plan to read it, but I don't. I'm reading stuff on the fringes, or even if I do, like I read the Punisher series, not the one that's being with the Becky Cloonan one now, but the one before. I'm supposed to be doing a spotlight on it. I can't remember the writer on it now, but the Punisher series that they did, where he's based out of LA, and then the Black Widow series, the same writer was doing it, but he was doing it with different artists. Both, like, they were on the fringe. They didn't tie into the main Marvel universe. They was like their separate thing, like skirting the edges, kind of like Daredevil always kind of does. He doesn't get involved in all the main universe stuff, and it works. It just works for me because I don't have to get bogged down in all that continuity and minutia, because all these events and reboots and soft reboots that they just keep doing every few months, it just gets too daunting, and I've been burnt out for it since the first Civil War. And now we've had a second Civil War, and I'm just blah. And the Star Wars stuff, I read a large majority of Star Wars and really enjoy it. I still read my other comics, Image, IDW stuff. So I'm spread out different places, but the ones that I spend a lot of time on, like the Star Wars stuff right now, all of it has really been good that I've read. I think it's, some of the miniseries. I started reading Chewbacca but didn't finish it. I started reading Lando, didn't finish it. I don't think I finished, I haven't tried Han Solo. I know that series ended because it was a limited series, and I haven't. Poe Dameron's comic. I think maybe out of the ongoings, that's the only one that I haven't tried. That's a Star Wars tie-in one. That I'll try at some point. I just haven't gotten to it yet because A, it's so many of them. B, they're so expensive, and I can't afford it. So I get it when I see certain things on sale. I'll stock up then so I can go back and catch up on the stuff. But so far, they're just producing the comics that I've really just been heavy into the Star Wars stuff, and I've really been enjoying what they've been producing on that front end with characters I like Black Widow and like the Punisher, those offshoot things like that doesn't tie in heavily to the Marvel Universe, and you can just enjoy the character. There's been some good stuff on that. Best moment. This might be a spoiler if you don't read The Walking Dead on a regular basis, so I'm putting spoiler alert here. Negan killing Alpha. If you've been keeping up with it, this kicked off a major event called the Whisper War. Negan breaks out of his prison, his prison that Rick had him in. This happened in Walking Dead 156, and he goes to the Whisperers, and you're thinking he's going to join up with them. He's with them. He gets the leader alone. If she's a female, he's trying to, what you think, woo her, and he's kind of like dancing with her, and she's opening up, being vulnerable, and he kills her. He slits her throat, cuts her head off, takes it back to Rick, and so kicks off the Whisper War. And it was such a shocking thing because how they presented Alpha up to that point, like you really didn't see that coming. But then at the same time, it's Negan, and he's one of the most unpredictable characters in comics ever. So I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was, and my jaw dropped when I read it and then when I saw it. Kind of crazy. Now I want to talk about the top 10 episodes from you guys as far as the number of downloads and listens that I've had. The top 10 ranked episodes of the show. This is going from bottom to top. So this is counting down. 10 is episode 314, Comics Talk, my top 10 single issues of all time. Had fun doing that episode. Really made me go back and look at single issues of a comic that just resonated with me. I put a lot of thought and work into, tracking that and stuff down. And certain stuff was stuff that I don't have digitally. The stuff from my childhood that I remember that I had to really do research just to, certain things that I remember. You had fragments of memories of certain things. It was crazy how a lot of that stuff that I talked about, you can't find. You know what I mean? It's really hard to find. So luckily, we have the internet and like Google where, it helped a lot in researching that. Number 9 was episode 298, me ranking the Marvel, the MCU films. That was a fun episode because I think I went back and I rewatched all the movies at the time, and that's always kind of fun going back, and it always seems to change because how they're interconnected. One movie affects the others tremendously on how they tie in or they lack to tie into the bigger or greater picture. Number 8 was my Captain America Civil War review. That was episode 297. Number 7 is episode 313, my Doctor Strange review. Is that number 6? Whatever. Well, the next one is episode 312, which was the holiday shopping guide, which was always fun to do because it's always good to throw out suggestions out there on what to buy that comic enthusiast in your life, or if you're looking for something cool for yourself. So I thought that was a fun episode. Next one is 299 was the X-Men Apocalypse review. That movie was just such a disappointment. I was hoping for so much more. That probably is my biggest disappointment of the year as far as anything comic book related was X-Men Apocalypse. has so much potential. Next was episode 291, which was my Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice review. Number 3 on the list is my episode 287, which was my Deadpool movie review. The number 2 most popular episode of the year was episode 293. Was the Comics Talk episode I did on DC Rebirth when they did all the announcements during the summer leading into DC Rebirth kicking off. I had a lot of fun researching that and watching the panel they did and taking all the notes and stuff like that. I love sometimes just doing the prep for the show for big episodes like that. And that was a really big episode. There was a lot of work to it. But I had fun. It was definitely fun doing. And the most popular episode, which kind of surprised me, was episode 304, which was my review of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition. It surprised me, but then it didn't, because it felt like it was such a personal thing, because it changed my utter view of the movie so much. It kind of shocked me, because it took a movie that I thought was a decent movie and made it a good to great movie for me. And that's saying a lot, because it's hard to do that nowadays, but it just goes to show you in this whole mega machine of, these comic book movies and studios being involved that, and we're seeing it more and more. And I think it's a Warner Brothers problem, and I hope they correct it, that, we heard about all the multiple cuts of Suicide Squad, and we didn't get a really good, they released the Ultimate Edition or Director's Edition, but it didn't add anything in the movie, and we heard it was like at least 3 or 4 different cuts to the movie. And I feel like we're never going to get the true story on what Suicide Squad was supposed to be. We're going to see just, the Ultimate Edition didn't even garner that name of Ultimate Edition. I felt like it was really a ripoff. That's just that. But yeah, it was really cool that, such a personal episode to me, just because my views I expressed in it, and that you guys kind of resonated with it, and you guys liked it. That means a lot to me. So, it just seems like my movie reviews always seem to do well. I guess that has become a cornerstone of, of a lot of what the show, is, because I don't necessarily cover comics. I do that hard. There's so many other podcasts that do that. I do. That's what I do talk about comics when it warrants it. But there's so much other great stuff, movies, TV, animated. There's so many other things, and I like the fact that you guys allow me that freedom to cover those other things, because they all tie into the ecosystem, which is comics, which we love, which is in the comic book business. So it's good that I have that freedom, and I'm allowed that freedom by you guys as the listeners to do different things, because you can go 1,000 different places literally on the internet to get comic reviews, so it's a part of some of the stuff I do. But, I like having that freedom that I don't have to read every new thing to review that for you guys. I can kind of bounce around, and if it's an old series or a series I never touched on or characters I never touched on, I can read it and it's new to me, and hopefully in me reviewing it and bringing it to you, I'm introducing you to new stuff that's sending you on a journey to check out different characters, maybe expand out of your comfort zone, or it might have been books before your time that now I'm opening up your eyes to, that I'm rereading or reading for the first time myself. We can go on that journey together, which is the onus of really what the Comic Book Savant show has been all about. Like I said, when I look back at what I read when I started the show years ago to what I read now, my reading scope has expanded by 1,000. And that's a tribute to the relationship I have with you guys as listeners, and recommendations that you've given over the years. It's a collaborative process. Now, to get on to things that I'm looking forward to in 2017, I'm just going to touch on these briefly, because there'll be things definitely I'll be covering in the year of 2017. Looking forward to the Darth Maul limited series by Marvel. We have Invincible ending, which is Robert Kirkman's long running. His I'm pretty sure that Invincible started right before Walking Dead. So, him ending, such a staple series for him, I think is very interesting, and that's going to be a huge event. As far as on the video game front, I loved Injustice God Among Us. I'm totally stoked for Injustice 2, which now as we're going into the end of the year, I think it comes out in February or March, so we only got a couple of months before that hit. I love that first game. It was so much fun. I spent so much time playing it. So I'll be talking about that coming up. Iron Fist is where I want to say it comes out sometime in January, so we don't have too much longer before Iron Fist hits Netflix and breaks the internet like Luke Cage did that first weekend. Also, something I talked about before that also comes out in January, if I'm not mistaken. I did an episode about it a few episodes back, and I had the release date. I'm pretty sure it was sometime in January. Is Voltron Legendary Defender Season 2. It ended on such a cliffhanger. The trailer they showed for Season 2 looked dope. I am stoked for that. And one of the things, as far as the comic book related movies, the one I'm looking forward to the most, I'm looking forward to them all, but the one that I'm secretly rooting for more than any of them is Wonder Woman. I feel like the DC Expanded Universe needs a hit, a bona fide hit that everyone agrees upon, and that's a hit. I think this could be the movie. From everything I've seen, I love Gal Gadot. I questioned it in the beginning, but once I saw Batman v Superman, she sold me on it, and I'm sold on this movie. And I hope that it's this runaway hit, because they need one at this point. If they have another meh movie, I don't know if people are going to still have interest in Justice League. If they have had, all of their movies has been divisive, whatever. Far as how they performed, and then how critics received them and fans received them. And I feel like they need one true, clear hit now to kind of right the ship, and that they know what they're doing is working, and then they can kind of push forward and and then we can start anticipating a Justice League. If Wonder Woman is like meh or bad, how much interest really is Justice League, but I think my interest would wane tremendously if this movie's not good. And I just feel, from everything in my bones and my gut, I feel like it's going to be this runaway hit to kind of get DC out of their own way and build up that anticipation, because it's great to have competition. And right now, in the comic book movies, realm, Marvel's biggest competition is Star Wars. Star Wars' biggest competition is Marvel. And you know what? The same damn company owns them, Disney. So really, is it a competition? Because they're just dominating this theater and movies just on their own. So again, those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to. I do want to say this in closing. We just lost Carrie Fisher, and I just wanted to say a few words about that. Just leading up to seeing Rogue One, I went back and I watched all the movies, and she's been such an influential character, just as her portrayal of Princess Leia, just being able to see a strong woman on screen, and was always, and still was a lady. They didn't emasculate her to make her strong, which I always respected. And I hope we see more characters based on her portrayal of Princess Leia. It's crazy, how we lose, certain people, and it shows my age. I was, in 77, I was like 2 years old. And, I grew up on Star Wars. I cannot literally tell you how many times I've watched the original trilogy. I probably watched those movies over 100 times per movie, at least. So literally she was a part of my childhood, and then seeing her back in Force Awakens, and, after her death was announced, I don't know, was it Lucasfilm or someone reported that all the principal photography, all her shooting for her scenes in episode 8 were completed, so it wasn't stuff left that they would mess up anything with the production of the movie. I really don't care about that as much as, just losing an icon, in pop culture and in my life. Like I said, I grew up on those movies. Star Wars, was a very integral part of my, my childhood. And I've, and her relationship with Han Solo was kind of like, blueprint of what I thought relationships were supposed to be like, because it does seem super realistic and fun and flirty, and just her being a tough chick, and saucy. Like she embodied all that, and it was to that point, growing up, you didn't see any women like that. It spawned so many, it spawned so much imitation, but we've sort of gotten away from it recently, and we're seeing it with the Star Wars films, especially with Rogue One and Force Awakens, with their lead characters being females painted in that vein, and she influenced that, and it's a great loss, and again, it just makes me feel that much older, because it's like, I grew up, she was only 60 years old, and I'm 41, so she wasn't that so much, older than me when she was in those movies. When she was in Star Wars, she was like 18, 19 years old. So, it's just a big loss to the community. Rest in peace. And, I don't know, it's such a sad thing. But this year we lost so many famous people, influential people, Prince. It goes on and on and on. I'm not going to drag on about it because I don't want to end on a somber note. But, yeah, Carrie Fisher, rest in peace. I just wanted to dedicate this episode to you. Like they said in the movie, now she can be one with the Force. As always, you can find me at comicbooksavant.com. That's the website. On Twitter at comicbooksavant. On Instagram at comicbooksavant. The Facebook page is facebook.com/comicbooksavant. That's where you can find me. Feedback, awesome. If you want to leave a review, stop by iTunes, drop a review. That's all I have for you guys this week. Again, it's been a great year. Looking forward to a lot of stuff coming in next year. We have a huge slate of movies. I've just recently talked about all that stuff. So much stuff to look forward to. This was a good year. It looks like, 2017 is shaping up to be even better. I will see you guys on the flip side. Enjoy your New Year's, and I will see you next week, aka next year, for another episode of Comic Book Savant. Take care.
And into lyrical wholeness. And I know this, and I know this. This I know, this I know.